Schröder is a Tier 8 German heavy cruiser and the reward for the ongoing campaign of February March 2024. It's a unique cruiser, and I want to start right off the bat before we get into the stats or my build or anything like that by saying I don't think this ship is necessarily good or competitive, let's say. But at the same time, I've actually been having quite a bit of fun with it. Now, this game that you see before you actually happened on my update day stream. I just want to talk over it to give the review. I've played it more since then, but I actually think this game is quite representative of what you can expect if you play this ship, at least the way I have been playing this ship, and we'll get into that in a second. But you won't be able to mistake this for being something strong or competitive that could actually, carry a game. Although it is an enjoyable experience. Let's just get into the stats, and we will talk about my commander build too. Starting with the key of this ship. You can see the key of the ship in activation now, the secondaries against the Jaeger there. These are the calling card of the ship. They are what makes this a unique cruiser. But before we talk about the secondaries that are currently sort of shredding this destroyer, we should note that the Schröder comes with 59,300 HP, which is a lot of HP. It's more than the Petropavlovsk has at Tier 8. And it's got 22% torpedo damage reduction, which is a lot for a cruiser. That'd be horrible numbers on a battleship, but that's pretty good for a cruiser. As for the armaments of this thing, unlike most German cruisers, it does not actually have torpedoes. So it's the guns that are the bread and butter here. As for the main battery, there are 4 turrets, double turrets, for a total of 8 guns. They are 305 millimeters. So they are technically battleship caliber, like the Odin, for example. But they're the same size guns as the likes of Azuma, Alaska, Yoshino, those kind of things. There are only 8 of them, though. Those ships have, I think, 9 guns. The base range on these guns is not good. It's 15.6 or 15.7. I've got it up to 16.1 with the epic booster of battle propensity flag, but that really does not feel like a lot of range up here at Tier 8, and you might be tempted to buff it. But once we get to my commander, you'll see why I haven't. The reload time on the main battery is 18 seconds, which isn't great, but also isn't terrible. 180-degree turn time of 25.7 seconds, not all that bad. HE, like most German HE, is pretty anemic in terms of actual damage done. Maximum HE shell damage is 3,150, which does seem quite low for the shell caliber, but that is characteristic of most German HE. The fire chance is 22%, and the maximum AP damage is higher, maybe, than you would expect, 7,700. Although the guns can feel a little bit trolly, sometimes the dispersion seems pinpoint accurate. Other times it really makes you know that you're playing a German ship. And the penetration, like with most German armor piercing, seems to fall off at range. But when they do pen, of course, they do a lot of damage, and they are lethal to cruisers. But it's the secondaries that are really the main feature of this ship, I guess you could say. It has 20 128 millimeter secondaries and 9 150 millimeter secondaries, which may be the most numerous secondaries on any cruiser in this game. Not entirely sure. The base range of the secondaries, though, is crucially 6.8 kilometers. And so this allows you to build into the secondaries. But if you want to get full value, you're going to have to use a battleship commander. Now, who I've settled on is Azerlane Bismarck, who can, of course, buff the secondaries as a battleship commander. I'll put my build up on the screen. The main part here is the Porcupine skill in the second row and Master Mechanic in the fourth row. Porcupine, of course, gives you extra range on the secondaries, and if you want max range, you have to use that skill, which is only available on battleship commanders. And of course, Master Mechanic gives you extra heals. But one of Bismarck's unique skills, or actually her only unique skill, in the third row is called some name in German that I can't pronounce. What it does is decreases incoming damage from projectiles while the secondary battery is aiming or shooting. So when we're in close range and our secondaries are singing, as they have been around the corner of this island, well, we get a little bit of extra tankiness because of that skill. Kind of useful on a cruiser. In any case, it is a build designed entirely for secondaries. We've got Hipper as one of the inspirations, Mikawa as the other. Now, you could go Haruna for both inspirations, Hipper and Haruna, to get the most out of the secondaries. If you do that, you'll get them out to a range of, I think, 10.8 kilometers. With just Hipper, though, and the Porcupine skill, and of course the secondary mod, we have them out to 10.3. So there's not really much of a difference there between 10.8 and 10.3 was my thinking. And without Mikawa, the concealment on this thing is over 11 kilometers, whereas with Mikawa on the commander build as an inspiration, we've got a slightly lower concealment at 10.7, which means there's about 400 meters between our secondary range and our concealment. Good enough for me, I say. In any case, the secondaries are the highlight here. The smaller 128mm secondaries with the secondary reload mod in the fourth slot reload in 2.6 seconds. They do 1,500 damage with their HE shells, and they have a 5% fire chance. The 150s do 1,700 damage, and they have an 8% fire chance with a 5.1 second reload. As you can see from this game, they are actually fairly useful, or they can be. We've started a couple fires with them. We've landed 86 hits. And when they were landing on our targets, you could see that they were penetrating, which leads me to believe that they probably have the quarter pen that most German HE and most secondaries do in this game, and that's kind of nice. In fact, I'm almost certain that they do, because when I took this thing out against an Alabama the other day, the secondaries were hitting him on his bow, which is 32 millimeters, and they were penetrating. And it looked like the smaller ones were as well. Could be wrong about that, but they were doing quite a bit of damage. Still, though, we have not covered the full stats on this ship. Maneuverability, maximum speed of 33.5 knots, which actually feels fairly slow. The consumable choice is interesting, though. You can see that we actually have an engine boost, and that does help with the speed. I have subsequently switched that out for the secondary module, but I'm honestly not sure what the best choice is, because this speed does feel rather pedestrian, and in my mind, I think you want to get the ship on a flank. You want to push it into an area, preferably with island cover, that can protect you from taking return fire, so that maybe you can get your secondaries on these targets and watch the fireworks and the damage tick up. But it's difficult to do that with a top speed of 33 knots, which really turns into more like 30 knots if you're actively maneuvering. So the engine boost does help with that. At the same time, maybe you want the secondary consumable to increase the accuracy, get a little bit more damage, maybe start a couple more fires. But I think either way you can go. Turning circle on this ship, 840 meters, which isn't all that bad. Rudder shift is slow, though, at 13.6 seconds. And then finally, our concealments with the concealment module and Mikawa as one of our inspirations. 10.7 kilometers by sea, which seems pretty good for a ship with a main battery of 305mm guns. In any case, I don't think this is a competitive ship. I don't think it's going to be all that useful for carrying games. And the guns, the main battery guns, that is, do sometimes feel anemic. You'll notice that I was shooting a lot of HE. The reason for that is because while the AP can be great, especially against cruisers, it can do real damage to their broadsides. It's not so great against battleships, and that's what we were shooting at most of the time. I haven't gotten that many good hits on battleships with the AP, even when they are broadside. I'm sure it can be done, but my thought was switch to the HE, start fires with the main guns, and then hopefully push in and deal some more damage and light some more fires with the secondaries. Speaking of pushing in, though, we should take a look at the armor scheme. The thing is very well armored. It's got a 27 millimeter bow and stern, which means it can be overmatched by 16-inch guns, and it has no icebreaker to protect the citadel. So that is maybe a little bit of a liability, but the side plating is a robust 90 millimeters. The deck is 30, and then there is a turtleback slope protecting the citadel with 28 millimeter plating that theoretically might be able to stop a lot of battleship shells from citadeling you. I can't really tell if the angle on the turtleback slope is good enough for that, and it doesn't extend too far down past the water line. So, like the FDG, I think if you get caught in a turn, that means the turtleback is pulled out of the water and you are liable to take a citadel. But I don't know if it's really going to stop battleship caliber AP. Certainly at 28 millimeters, that is a significant value because that means it can't be overmatched by 16-inch guns. So theoretically, it could work. But the armor is definitely enough to keep this thing protected, particularly when it is facing battleships with 15-inch guns. You could theoretically push straight into one and not really worry about being taken down. Of course, you don't have any torpedoes. If you do push straight in, you have to rely exclusively on the secondary and main batteries. But still, you could do it, and the ship is fast enough that theoretically, maybe if I wanted to push into that Jean Bar, I could get behind him where his guns couldn't hit me, and I could get some work done with the secondaries and the main guns. And you can see these secondaries are even doing some damage against the Kronstadt. Unfortunately, it's just me and this battleship versus the Jean Bar, Kronstadt, and Wichita. The Wichita is kiting out to the edges of the world. The battleship really cannot do anything against the Wichita. I think it's an Italian battleship, and its guns are not necessarily reliable. So now he's surrounded by the Jean Bar, Kronstadt, Wichita, and he's going to go down, which will leave me alone with 9,000 HP against these three ships. Now, if I was in something else, maybe something that could get good results on battleship broadsides, say, then perhaps I could have taken out this Jean Bar. In fact, if I had a little bit more HP and a ship that was slightly more competitive, I probably could have won this game entirely. But this is the Schröder, and if anything, it's not a competitive ship, but it is a fun, meme-worthy ship. There's just something about being able to push in with a cruiser and having secondaries that extend out past 10 kilometers that will actually do damage when they hit and will light fires. We've got a lot of fires in this game, thanks in large part to these secondaries. I've actually gotten a Witherer because of these secondaries, just the overall game wasn't good enough to show on YouTube. But they do start fires. They are useful. They're probably not the most accurate secondaries in the game, but they will land shots. They will hit things. And you can have a lot of fun. There is a lot of fun to be had in this ship, but I don't think it's going to be carrying games for you like some other cruisers. It might be good in ranked, perhaps, but in standard battles, maybe not so much. So my final thoughts on this ship can be summed up as it's not one that is going to be necessarily carry capable. It's more of a meme ship that you can have a lot of fun in if you're okay with, not driving the best ship in the world. So I think I would recommend, honestly, buying the Admiralty backing and completing this campaign. This is, at the very least, a unique cruiser that offers you some possibilities for memery. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.